Welcome everybody, and we have come here together once more to practice Dhamma and gather on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and paying respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And how many people were here for the last session? Most people? Okay, most people were here last time. Oh, pretty much everyone. Okay, good. So last time we did an afternoon on morality, on ethics, and we did a nice little game with some pictures where we had to sort of try to identify and draw out the pictures from the meaning of that. And one of the reasons why I introduced that practice, partly just to do something different, maybe a bit fun, but more than that, because I wanted to stimulate a reflection about the application of Buddhist morality in ways that we don't normally encounter it. It's not enough just to inherit a tradition, but we have to engage with it, and we have to engage with it with wisdom. And so these are some of the themes that we will be addressing today, especially in the latter half of today's session when we look at the question of wisdom. Now, but before we get there, we're going to look at Samadhi. So the overall course is the way to enlightenment. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Right? Ethics, meditation, wisdom. We did ethics last week. Meditation. All right? You ready? You sure? Do you trust me? 100%. 100%. Thank you very much, Aya. Some people are looking nervous. Yeah? I would be too. It's understandable. So look, I wanted to try to do something a bit different with you today. And I'm going to have to get some feedback from you because maybe you won't like it. All right? And if you don't like it, then tell me. And then we will have made a successful experiment. Right? Because an experiment that fails is one that tells you that that's going to fail. So if it doesn't work, that's good. So what we could do is that I could sit here for the next 3 hours and sort of drone on about Buddhism, which would be fun for me, and therefore I assume must be for you as well. But I've given lots of talks, I've written lots of books and so on about meditation in Buddhism from so many different perspectives. And so it is, I think, this session. It's really one of the first times that we've sort of come together in person to be able to do this event after such a long time. So I'm really hoping to do something that's a bit more interactive, something where we can connect with each other a little bit more, and something where we can do something that's, we can't get just by watching a video on YouTube. So here's my proposal, and please tell me if it's dumb, because if it's dumb, we won't do it, okay? But my proposal is this. So I'll begin by saying just a few words and a bit of an introduction and guidance in meditation, okay? Then I'm going to ask you to partner up, okay? Break up into pairs with somebody that you don't know or you don't know all that well, all right? Then you're going to find a meditation buddy, all right? And your meditation, if you only feel comfortable with someone that you know or something, that's also fine. Right? I'm not going to enforce that, but generally speaking, try to meet someone new. Then you're going to have a meditation buddy, okay? And with your meditation buddy, you are going to, first of all, discuss a little bit and share a little bit about each other's practice, okay? Just a few minutes to get a feel, how long you've been practicing and how's your practice going and so on. And then you're each going to lead each other in a guided meditation. All right? So one does guided meditation for 10 minutes for the other, and then you discuss it a little bit. How was that? Get feedback. And then the other one does it for the other one and discuss that a little bit. What do you think? And then we can come back as a group and talk about it. You like it? Okay, very good. Okay. Look, I understand, like for some different people are going to have different responses, right? Some people may be shy or, have social anxiety or something. So if you do, please let me know, okay? I'm not trying to force people to do anything to make them uncomfortable, but I'm just hoping to maybe just sort of push a little bit to engage with meditation in a slightly new way. All right? Does that sound okay? Everyone happy so far? Reasonably? a few slightly skeptical looking people. If it's a slight skepticism's okay, but like if it's a massive freak out, then that's probably not okay, you know. Anyway, okay, so let me say just a few words to introduce and to explain why it is that I had this idea of going about it in this way. Okay, so this session is devoted to the topic of Samadhi, right? Now, etymologically, the main meaning of Samadhi is the gathering together or collecting of something. And it also carries a strong connotation of peacefulness. And also carries, perhaps not such a strong, but also a connotation of brightness and light. Right? So a state of mind that is unified, harmonious, peaceful, and bright. Yeah? The practice of meditation in Buddhism aims to lead towards such a state. Of course, it's a long road, and the states that the Buddha talked about are very profound. There is a reason why the great sages would leave everything behind and go up into the Himalayas and live there for decades at a time, trying to meditate and realize these states. So we need to keep this kind of balance. On the one hand, to aspire to what is great and what is transcendent, but on the other hand, to start with where we are at. The Buddha was not too concerned about what particular state that a meditator was at. He was much more concerned about what direction that they were going. That's all that really matters. So the purpose of our meditation practice is to move towards a greater peace, a greater oneness, a greater brightness and clarity in the mind. Now, to do that, then of course we use various meditation techniques, and mindfulness of breathing or loving kindness meditation, like vipassana, bare awareness meditations, and so on. So many different ways that we can approach meditation. All of them are fine, okay? There's basically all the different meditations are fine, but it's about what we can bring to it. It actually doesn't matter too much, you know, what kind of meditation we do. If we find one that is suitable for us, that we find to be rewarding, that's great. And we practice that, but it's 90%, 99% of it is what we bring to the meditation. Now, one of the things that we lack, I think, in the way we talk about meditation these days is we lack something of that sense of a personal transmission of meditation. We have abstracted meditation out to techniques which can be printed in a book. You can pick up countless books around here and they will all teach you a method of meditation, and all those methods are basically fine, okay? But it's still just words in a book. Or we have apps, so you can learn meditation from an app. Who uses an app for meditation? Anyone using a meditation app? I've got one. I don't use it. I did an interview with the people who made it one time, so I had to download it and try it out and so on. It's okay if you need that. But traditionally, that's not how meditation was taught. Right? Traditionally, meditation was taught when you had your local temple, right, your local community, and you would go there and you would request a meditation and you would talk with the monks or nuns there, or with whoever had experience with meditation in your community. Didn't have to be monastics, but whoever had experience, and then you would learn from them. And rather than thinking in terms of like having a technique, it was much more about sharing and supporting a person to undertake meditation, looking for what a person needed and responding to that. And so that, I think, is something that we've really lost. We have, of course, these days people discuss about meditation online, and I really strongly recommend not doing that. It's a terrible environment for talking about meditation. It's complete context collapse. And I can guarantee you that you will end up talking to crazy people about states of jhanas and enlightenment and things like that. I mean, and this is what, and you've got no idea who these people are or what you're talking about. It's just an inappropriate context. And yet it's hard for us to find an appropriate context. And look, I'm well aware that in the choices I've made in my life, I haven't made it easy for people. Like, I don't spend a lot of time these days doing one-on-one or close personal guidance and advice in meditation. I did more when I was at Santi Monastery, and people would come up and stay, and we would have time to talk and things, and we could do that. But the way I'm living now, it's not really easy to do that. So what I want to try to do is to try to create a bit of a bubble here, a bit of just a small environment where we can each sort of try to create, even just with one other person, an environment where we can share and support and trust each other in our meditation. Yeah? And so that means that we're going to have a few guidelines. Number one, no Pali. Okay? You're not allowed to talk about your meditation in terms of Pali, okay? That's it. Number two, no jhanas or attainment or enlightenment or anything like that, okay? Don't even think about it. It's not in my class, all right? If you're enlightened, good on you, okay? Great, okay? Keep it to yourself, all right? But in this kind of conversation, it's not about impressing anybody. It's not about showing what you know. It's not about whether you have listened to 100 of my Dhamma talks or that you've read 1,000,000 suttas or whatever. It's not about any of those things. It's about being able to connect with another human being and about trying to listen to where that human being is at and to be able to say something that is going to be able to support and help them. So when you're doing the guided meditation, is there anybody here who has done a guided meditation, who has led a guided meditation before? Is that one? You led one? Yeah? A few people have led guided meditations before. That's great. I do guided meditations all the time. No one ever taught me how to do it. Okay? And you know why I do it? I do it because people say, please do it. Whenever I say, should we do a silent meditation or a guided meditation, every single time they say, let's do a guided meditation. So people like it. I do it the way that works for me. You have to find a way to do it that's going to work for you. Just try it out. It's okay. Yeah? If it doesn't work, it's all right. You learn from that. Yeah? But just try. And so when you're giving the guided meditation, your aim is simply to speak very simply. People don't need much. Yeah? A little bit of support, a little bit of structure, a little bit of encouragement is going to be enough to be able to help to lift that person up. Yeah? And to bring them into a space where they can trust. And they can, because meditation is all about trust and vulnerability, because we are starting to open up. Yeah. So, who knows what might happen? Yeah. People might start crying. Yeah. It's all right. Maybe they'll start laughing. It's all right. Who knows what might happen? We will see. Yeah. And if you're being guided, then listen for the guidance. Before you start the guided meditation, then you should agree what you're going to do. Like someone will say, oh, should we do some breath meditation? We'll do that, or whatever you feel comfortable doing. So you try that. And then if you're being guided, then listen carefully, try to respond to the instruction. And then afterwards, share a little bit with the person that you're talking to. So, oh, that was really nice when you said this. And, went out there. Or if nothing worked, is also fine. Just say, look, I tried, but it didn't work for me. Also is fine, yeah? And so we're trying to develop a way of being able to communicate with each other about meditation. Yeah? Not as easy as it sounds. Yeah? Because it's very vulnerable and it's bound up with our sense of identity, it's bound up with our anxieties, and it's bound up with who we think we are, who we're afraid of becoming. So thank you so much for coming. Making me look not late. It's great. Come. And okay, so what I hope that we can learn from this session is what I hope we can learn from this session is a few things. Number one, I hope that we can learn that in our meditation we are not alone. That these are experiences that are shared with so many other people. Yeah? At the same time, I hope we learn that we also are different, because we make assumptions about what everybody else is doing based on what we're doing. But actually, where somebody else is at might be completely different from where we are at. You know? I hope that we can maybe, especially for the people who have not done this kind of thing before, we can maybe learn what is it actually like if we're the one who's teaching and trying to express the Dhamma. Yeah? That's a bit of a learning curve. Yeah? And to be able to articulate and express things, it's not easy. But remember, don't be nervous, don't be worried. Okay, you guys are wondering what the hell I'm talking about, right? So don't be nervous, don't be worried, okay? Just we'll do some sharing and we'll support each other. That's all that we're here for. Okay? Does that sound like a good idea? You happy to go ahead? Okay, we're going to do that. Any questions before we start? You guys have questions? Yeah. Well, I'm just going to explain very briefly, because we've been talking with the other guys. So what we're going to do for the first part of the session here, we're going to break up into pairs. We're going to find a meditation buddy. Okay? And for the first few minutes, I'll ring a bell to stop the time, but the first few minutes you'll just talk with your meditation buddy about your meditation, how long you've been practicing, what kind of practice you do. Then when it's ready to start properly, one of you will do a guided meditation for the other. Okay? So you need to find someone who you don't know. Okay? Or at least, try to find someone you don't know. And then one of you does a guided meditation for the other practices, and then afterwards you talk about it for a few minutes. And then you swap over, and then the other one does a guided meditation for this one. Again, about 10 minutes for the meditation, and then maybe 5 or 10 minutes for discussion. Okay, is that clear? And then when that's finished, we can come back and talk about it. What do you reckon? Is it clear enough? You have to agree with that with your partner. Yeah. If your partner says, just surprise me, then you surprise them. But yeah, it can be any kind of meditation, but that's part of the process, right? To be able to listen to each other and to understand what's actually going to be useful for that other person at that time. Yeah. The one leads, the other follows, then swap over, and the other leads, the other follows. Yep. All right? Good. Let's go. That seemed like fun, but I wasn't doing it, so... What was it like? Yeah, anyone want to share any feedback? Positive, negative feedback? It's confusing, it's a waste of time. You feel like you've drifted further from Nibbana than ever before. Yeah, it's all good. Sorry? Yes? It's kind of fun, isn't it? Yeah, because you get to feel like you're controlling someone else's mind. Only mostly kidding. But tell me, what was it like being in the hot seat?
Not a matter of control of power. It was trying to tune in. I'm thinking, am I going too fast for her breathing? Or,
right.
So I was trying to take that into account. So I was taking into account a lot of cues from the person, which makes me wonder how somebody up the front, when you've got a whole pile of people, takes those cues.
Yeah, it's obviously it's not so much if you're doing with many people, but yeah, good. And did that work? Like when you discussed, did you talk about that? And
yeah, yes, we did.
And I also enjoyed your metta. You were doing the metta meditation.
Yes, I did. One of my comments on the metta was when there was a pause in concentrating on other beings. I could hear all the meditation going on in the room, the feet, and somebody else. At one stage when I was in the hot seat, I heard somebody else say, now, if you just feel into that spot, and if you feel anything uncomfortable, stay there for a little while. I'm thinking, we don't have time for that.
So, yes, so these are somewhat leaky meditations, somewhat leaky.
sharing with Daniela that the most wonderful part about it was the sense of being nurtured. Because if I listen to a recorded guided meditation, although I'm listening to it, it's not for me.
Right.
Whereas I think and that sense of gratitude sort of pervaded the whole meditation, and it really grounded me. It was lovely. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. And that's what it's all about. Anyone else have any other feedback, experiences? What was yours like?
Like Aaron guides me with the mental meditation, because I say I usually use the breathing and bracing forward. And we tried a little bit, and Aaron guided me, and then ended up listening to the practice. The enjoyable part, I think. Having to meditate together and with body.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I saw you guys were doing some moving meditation. So that was nice. How was that like?
Yeah, it was excellent. I think it starts to stand up. I was kind of glad that maybe I was the only person standing up. I think it was really nice. It's maybe we were talking about that. I think for me it's like a telling into meditation. Often.
Was what? Sorry, I missed that last phrase. You said it's a something meditation?
I'm telling you.
Oh, you're telling you, right.
And sometimes I feel like that people that begin, they think about it as very much as sitting.
Right.
Or lying, down is very still. But that initial activation of the body, I think, is a really good way to ground the mind.
Yep.
After Andrew's excellent movement, we then sat and did a sitting meditation, and I think even though I was leading that, I feel like having the grounding made it easy to be more present, and I hope that maybe that would have made it for easy space.
Yep. Great. Anyone else? Feedback? Daniel?
Share with Alex.
Yes. How was that?
Meditation. Was quite useful, I think, for both of us. In a sense. The kindness of meditation. Self-meditation. Chanting meditation. Meditation, which is largely Hinduism, Buddhism, that you pray at the same time, or concentrating on your breathing.
Right.
And try to get your brain from not to wonder about.
No.
We essentially talked about how to limit wandering brain function.
Wandering brain. Yeah.
Some useful
Yeah.
parameters.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, that's really nice. Anyone else? Daniela, you were going to say something.
No, just my experience was I was so scared.
So scared.
So scared in the first place. Because,
Okay.
because I was the second person. I was scared because it was so good. I was guided, and I was at the same time so scared because it's so good, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's a big responsibility. What I'm going to do, you know? And because I never done these things before.
Sure, yeah.
And then, yeah,
Don't judge Sam by his t-shirts, all right? He's very gentle.
yeah, and then, because as we were talking, it's a very genuine exercise because there's a pure connection, and you can what worked for me when I was guiding was just I was feeling exactly the same as I was felt. At the same
Right.
time I was doing the meditation basically with him. But at the end I was actually wet on my hands, very, very. I
Okay.
was very nervous, but
Okay.
at the end it was a good connection.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing and for sharing honestly. So that the point you made there about that you could like feel it as you were doing the meditation. Yeah, that's something I discovered the very first time I ever did a guided meditation. Actually, I was at Bodhinyana, at Brahm's monastery. I was still just a young monk, I don't know, 3 or 4 rains or something, and there was a group of people that came and we had to do a meditation or have to do something for them. I can't remember why. And no one was around or whatever, so I ended up doing it. And so then I'm up there, I've never done this before, so what do? I thought I will do a guided meditation. And so we just sort of did it. And I did a metta meditation. And I was almost I just thought I would just, do it for them. And I was really kind of surprised to find that actually I really felt the metta when doing it. And, I was like, wow, that's amazing. How is that, because I'm actually talking and so on. But there is that sort of thing where you actually... somehow the expression of it helps you to connect with it as well. Yeah. Good, thank you. Anyone else? So, Dana. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Beautiful. What was it like for you, Ishika?
Yeah, so initially she started with peace, metta and peace, and then she went on to breath meditation. Yeah, I felt really peaceful.
Okay.
Listening to her in such a close proximity.
Okay.
I felt connected.
Do you think it was like easier to meditate like that than doing it by yourself?
Yeah, I like being guided.
Yeah.
It was better than listening to a recording.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Anyone else who want to share what their experience was like?
The interaction was also peculiar though, because in the process, I'm also thinking about what we'll discuss afterwards. That's sort of the feedback was both coming up at the same time, and because I think, like you mentioned too, that the thought of I've got to go next, and that's why I was glad to go first, because I knew that might have been a thing. So there's sort of a few things going on at once there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's also in a way, that's also part of a meditation process anyway, isn't it? Right? Because when you're meditating, your mind is going to the past and the future. And even if you're, if you're meditating and your mind becomes peaceful, then the next thing you're like, oh, my mind's become peaceful. Oh, that's good. Yeah, better hold on to that. So that's in a way that's those things are coming up, but they're coming up within a space that gives you space to be able to reflect on them as well. Yeah. Yes. Yes, you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just want to add in that I've got to thank you because I've never felt that I had permission to give that gift to somebody before.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Actually, we should have done that at the end, shouldn't we? I was going to ask we should namaste to our partner at the end. Yeah. Okay, good. Anybody else would like to share their experiences?
I think, like, the beginning is actually the hardest part, because, like, the judgment, kind of like,
Right.
Because when I started with you, Aaron, like, kind of like, I'm not sure if, especially I started with the breathing, so breathing in and out, and I was worried about, is he's breathing in or out at the moment? I should focus on like the direction rather than thinking about the people that I guide. But yeah, that's the reflection that I did after with you, and saying that, maybe I should just focusing on the way I guide, not like people.
Yeah.
Now we understand the difficulty of people.
Yeah. Well, yes, I mean, obviously if you're doing a group, then you can't really worry about that too much because everyone's breathing. But that's, like, I think that one of the things which it kind of brings up, and which I was trying to bring up, is like, when you're talking to somebody in that way, where you're talking to someone through meditation, you have to believe that your voice is capable of bringing peace and wisdom to another person. Yeah? And that is calling us to elevate our right speech, right? And as well as our empathy and compassion, to try to think, how can we actually, like, use our words with a lot of, think about how you're using your words in that kind of space, right? Slowly, quietly, with a lot of empathy and compassion, and not many of them, just a few words and a lot of space. Yeah? And that by itself can make a lot of difference to another person. Yeah? And so each of you has that capacity. Okay? You can bring peace to yourself and peace to somebody else as well. And you have the wisdom and the intention, the good motivation to be able to do that. Congratulations. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please. Yeah.
Can I suggest one suggestion? That other people here ask me to hear other people. If we were set off to do a little cocooning of ourselves, so that we would spread out, cocoon ourselves. Anyone who is a teacher has to particularly cocoon themselves, because we use our teacher voice and speak loud.
Oh, right,
Teachers
yes.
can't help it, I'm sorry.
You're a teacher, yeah.
And you actually project your voice louder because you're teaching. So cocooning somewhere in the building.
That we need like a cone of silence. Yeah, like Agent Smart. Yeah. All right, very good. So why don't we have a bit of a break now? It's about 3:30. We'll have a break for 15 minutes. Stretch your legs, grab a cup of tea, go to the bathroom. We'll come back at 3:45, and then we will have our session on wisdom. Who knows what that might entail? Maybe. Okay, so for the remainder of the session, we're going to be discussing wisdom, and if it's okay, I'd like to maybe talk a bit more this time. Is that all right? Otherwise, you guys are going to be just complaining. And they said, "Dad, brought us along. He didn't say anything. Got us to do all the work." So I'll say a few things, and maybe we can have some conversation after that. I was just thinking, like, that session where we shared meditation, and in a way, like, trying to create an environment that is conducive and supportive to that experience that we're looking for. rather than simply talking about it. And I think too often in Buddhism, it's like we have a load of dirty laundry, and then we think, I'd better read a washing machine manual. Oh, it's a good washing machine manual. Yeah, have you read that one? Yeah, that's a good one. No, I like this other one better. Yeah, read that, and then I read that. Oh, yeah, that one's much better. It's more clear and more straightforward. Yeah, but strangely, my clothes are still dirty. I don't know how that works. So, how do we actually bring about that experience? And of course, in Buddhist traditions, there are ways of supporting that. You have monasteries. And you have a nice monastery in the forest, and you can go there and there's a nice hall, and it feels peaceful to go into that space. And it feels like you're being led into the meditation and supported that. And of course, it's not always possible to find that kind of environment. So we have to sort of be a bit playful and a bit imaginative to try to think of a way to support our meditation in the different contexts that we're going to be placed. Now, meditation and peaceful states of mind are not the goal of Buddhism. They are part of the path of Buddhism, but not the goal of Buddhism. The final part, the deepest part of the path of Buddhism is what we call wisdom, or panya. And so what I'd like to do is to break down this idea of wisdom a little bit, and to talk about it again from a practical point of view in terms of how we can develop it. Now, first of all, we can consider wisdom from the point of view of the content. All right, so this is if you like, the subject matter. And the subject matter in Buddhism is the Four Noble Truths. Who can tell me what the first noble truth is? Suffering. Excellent. Number 2. Craving, yes, like our good friend. Next one. Sorry? Cessation, ending of suffering, huh? And the final one? The path, excellent, okay? 4 noble truths. And when the Buddha defined wisdom, he defined wisdom in terms of 4 noble truths. And he said that these 4 noble truths are like a blueprint for the whole of the Buddha's teachings. One of my researches, sort of incidentally, was into the structure of the Samyutta Nikaya. And it seems that when the Buddha said that you can use that 4 noble truths as a blueprint for his teaching, he meant it rather more literally than you might suppose, because the Samyutta Nikaya, one of the great collections of Buddhist teachings, is in fact organized around the 4 noble truths, with discourses collected according to those subjects of the 4 noble truths. So it's as if he actually meant literally, when he said that you can include all my teachings in the 4 noble truths, he literally meant you can make a shelf in the library and put the topics on those. I mean, they didn't have actual libraries, it was oral teaching, but you get the point. So this is the content of what we're talking about, right? And that content is, we can draw out and explain it in many different ways. The characteristic of the Buddha's teaching, though, is not just in the content, but in the manner. How we acquire wisdom, how we go from darkness to light, from confusion to clarity. The normal way that we do that is to stumble around at random until we happen upon some bit of knowledge. Yay, us. And it takes a lot of time to learn, to understand how to understand, to know how to know. Let me break down a little bit the Buddha's method here. First step is you have to want to know. Or even before that, even before you want to know. First step is suffering. Right? If you don't suffer, then you don't want to find an end of suffering. And then everything is going to be purely theoretical. Okay? Now that does not mean that we are going to make you suffer. Some people sort of seem to be a bit fuzzy on that point. Right? We're going to sit you down and meditate, and you're not going to move, and you're going to experience all of this pain and so on, and then that's how you learn. No, that's not how the Buddha taught. So you go over, if you like that teaching, that's fine. You go over to the Jains, and our wonderful friend of the Jains, that's their teaching. And see if it works for you. The Buddha's teaching was to observe and understand suffering. The Buddha said, parinyayang, dukkha, suffering, parinyayang, to be fully known all the way around, to be known all the way through, parinyayang. So suffering is not to be avoided, escaped from, denied, glossed over, but to be fully known. Right. That's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Because normally we do all of those other things. Right? It's a bit of suffering and we want to escape from it. Very natural. So how do we go about that? And the Buddha didn't just sort of throw us in the deep end and expect us to swim. He tried to show us step by step how we can learn to do these things. So if we suffer, what next? What is the next stage in acquiring wisdom? Well, the next stage in acquiring wisdom is faith. When you hear the word of the Buddha, or someone teaching the Dhamma, or something like that, and you hear that, and you think, that's me. I always remember this line from Bruce Springsteen, Roy Orbison singing for the lonely. Hey, that's me. And you remember that, you hear that, that is me. I'm suffering. I feel grief. I feel loss. I feel confusion. I feel sadness. Sometimes it's suffering that's obvious. Maybe you get sick, or you lose a loved one. It's obvious. Sometimes you don't even know why. Sometimes you're just sad, and there's no reason for it. So when you hear the Buddha's teachings, faith arises. Maybe there's something I can do about this. Maybe there's a path. So then that arouses the sense of faith and the sense of curiosity, wanting to know. So the next stage is to go and see a teacher. Or, these days, maybe, look on YouTube, download something, whatever. But you make the effort to go and find that teaching. And when you do that, to make that effort to go and find that teaching with the right attitude, an attitude of humility, respect, but also inquiry and intelligence. The Buddha did not want you to check your brain in at the door of the temple. Okay? But we have to, there's a balance that we need to find when we're listening to teachings, neither blindly accepting nor being overly critical and judgmental, but to begin our understanding of teachings through empathy. Remembering that all of these teachings begin with that shared understanding that we all have suffering. That's the foundation of compassion and the foundation of empathy. The Buddha said his teachings are vedyamanasa, for one who feels. And when he was teaching, this is who he was teaching for. All of those who were suffering. I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption that means everyone here. So we hear. The Buddha said if we listen to the teachings uparamba citta arandhagavesi with a fault-finding mind, okay, looking for flaws, then we're never going to understand. Yeah? And just stop and then think about it. Think about how much dialogue that goes on in the world that is in fact like that. And people just looking for fault in the other people. Somebody disagrees with you, someone's on the other side, then whenever you're looking at it, what's wrong with it? How can I refute it? How can I... Yeah. And so we tend to engage, or many people tend to engage in dialogue with this kind of like gotcha mentality. Yeah, how can I get you? How can I own you? How can I show you how dumb you are and how smart I am? That kind of mindset will never lead to wisdom. Yeah. So our understanding is led by compassion. Yeah. So to listen. Yeah. The next stage. Now those ones, okay. So far, dukkha. We have suffering, we've got faith, we've got going and seeing the teacher, we've got listening. You've already done all those. You're here. Congratulations. Yeah, that's already pretty good. Right? So that's already many of the beginning steps in meditation and in the growth of wisdom. Now, what comes next? Hearing the teaching. Okay. Next one. Remembering. Yes. Remembering the teaching. Now, we have all of these books. This is a book from the Vinaya. And so this is a book that was passed down in the oral tradition of Buddhism for hundreds of years, memorized, letter for letter, word for word, sentence for sentence. Okay? And this is a tradition that we still keep up today. Right? So we still... We still memorize the teachings, right? And we can recite them. And we can do that word by word, letter by letter, syllable by syllable. Can you do that? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. See, we have a very different attitude towards listening and remembering things, right? And we don't have to, when we come through school and education, a lot of it is about schooling. We don't do rote learning at school anymore, most of us, depending on the, education background that we had. But for most of us, we don't have much emphasis on rote learning. I was very lucky when I came to the monastery because, when everybody was doing chanting, and trying to memorize Pali and all of these kinds of things. Most, especially the Western monks, had a lot of difficulty doing that because they had no experience with rote learning. Some Asian cultures, they still do more rote learning at school, and they had some more training. I was a musician. Great education for learning chanting, right? And I could listen to an album 2 or 3 times and memorize all the songs on it. It's just the skills of the trade, yeah? And you train yourself by doing that over and over and over and over and over again for many years. And so when it came to learning Pali, learning chanting, then I was able to pick that up, to memorize suttas, memorize long passages, and to be able to remember what the teaching is. You can do that too. It's just training. That's all it is. But you have to put a bit of effort into it. Okay? Put a bit of effort. Now, no one's expecting you to necessarily remember, lots of long teachings or anything like that. But you can use active listening when you're listening to Dhamma talks, and that can massively improve your retention. Now, I don't have any great, sophisticated sort of theories on how to do active listening or something, but I can just tell you how I do it and what works for me. When I'm listening to a Dhamma talk, if I really want to remember what's going on, for example, if I'm having to translate a Dhamma talk, I don't do that so much now, but in the past my Thai was reasonably good, so I would sometimes translate talks into Thai, or from Thai, or either way. And so when you're listening, first thing that you do is that pay close attention, obviously. Actively making sure that you understand each sentence is being spoken, you understand the purpose of the thread, and then every few minutes, maybe every 3 or 4 minutes, remind yourself what was just spoken. Yeah? Oh, we discussed this and this and this. He told that story, he told this story, we discussed that thing. And just make a mental note of that. Each time you go through, 2 or 3, a few minutes, and do that. Remind yourself then again, go back over the whole thing. And when you come to the end, once more, go back over the whole thing. Remind yourself, when you're fresh. This is really powerful if you do it when you're fresh. If you wait for an hour, most of it's gone. You do it right then, and remind yourself, oh, what was that talk about? What were the things you talked about? We discussed this. We talked, so far in this talk, we've talked about the Four Noble Truths. We talked about the process of gaining wisdom. We talked about suffering with faith, going to see a teacher with the right attitude, and we talked about listening, and we talked about the process of active listening. Yeah? So remind yourself of these things a few times during the talk. A lot of the times, these days, and look, I understand, because people's lives are busy, and often we're at a state of advanced mental exhaustion by the time we manage to drag ourselves to a Dhamma talk. Look, so I get it. Like, I'm not being judgmental about this. I understand, right? But a lot of times people come to many Dhamma talks and they don't really learn anything. And some people have this idea that they can sort of be in the same space as the Dhamma talk is happening, and it'll kind of wash over by a process of kind of osmosis. And that will kind of, that's how that works. And no, not really, unfortunately. So if you put a little bit of effort in, just actively remind yourself a few times during the talk, what have we been talking about? What are the main points? Yeah, what are the teachings? If there's something you don't understand, make a mental note of that. What was that about? Oh, you referred to this, or we talked about that. And then either ask at the end if you can, or if not, look it up afterwards. Yeah, just check for yourself what the answer is. So this is a process of active listening and engagement, and that will have, for me, and hopefully for yourself as well, will have a major impact in your ability to retain what was spoken about in the Dhamma talk. Okay, so be able to remember. Next thing for growth of wisdom is not just to remember what was spoken about, but to inquire. Yeah. Now, it's probably, I think, true to say that in most traditional Buddhist countries, the way that Dhamma is taught, the factors that I've talked about so far are usually pretty good. You know, you have people who have a lot of faith, they have a lot of devotion, they listen to a lot of Dhamma talks, even often remember a lot of things. But what you have a big lack of is a lack of critical inquiry. What does this mean? How does this bit relate to that bit? Why is this in that context and that is in that context? And this doesn't seem to connect with that, like they seem to have gone from here to there. What's the actual link there? And that process of critical inquiry into the meaning of the teachings to connect the relationship between things, this is another active process that can go on after the Dhamma talk. Now you can do that just by thinking about it after the talk. Great. When you're driving home or something like that, just think about what happened in the talk, think about the topics, questions that it might have raised, and so on. It's also something that is very much supported by Dhamma Sakkacha, by discussion of the Dhamma. Right? Find somebody to talk to and discuss it. Maybe you find somebody online, or if not online, in real life is obviously better. And to just talk about this and the teaching, and then there was that, and what did that mean? And I was really confused by this part, but that part I found, and try to learn to apply those principles of critical discernment to your teaching. So often I find that people, when they come to religious and spiritual life, don't apply even the most basic criteria of truthfulness to what we're talking about. People, and I'm not just talking about, people from a village or people who are just, don't have an education. I'm talking about doctors and lawyers and engineers and professional people who will repeat things in the context of Dhamma without any reflection or critical evaluation of what it is that they're saying, simply because somebody has said that to you. It's not the case that the mere fact of your being an intelligent and educated person means that you're going to apply that education and intelligence in a constructive way in the Dhamma. In fact, it often seems to be the opposite, because of the very fact that we do that in our work means we come to the Dhamma, oh, that's the last thing we want to do. Right? Oh, just nice to relax and just, again, I understand it, I get it, I get it. It makes sense. But it matters. It matters. It's important. This is why people get caught up in cults. Okay? This is why people get into abusive environments in the religious life, because they don't use their brains. Because usually these things are really obvious. But people get caught up in this projection and this idealization and this inability to even consider the possibility that something that's being said might be wrong. So it's really important to be able to inquire. It's important to acknowledge that your teacher is sometimes wrong. Okay, and when we have our forum on sort of Central, whenever I do any writing or do translations and things like that, I always go on the forum, you post something and you say, hey, give me feedback. Just this morning, I got some really good feedback on an essay that I wrote yesterday, and I realized, that whole explanation of that bit I got was just wrong. So I went and did it again. So I'm learning every day, because that's how I do things. I don't care whether I'm right or not. I care what the truth is, and that's what I'm interested in. So this is we need to have that same sense of integrity and carefulness with our spiritual life as we do with anything else, because it matters. We're not just messing around here. Yeah? It matters, and it makes a difference. And if you can use your intelligence and use your critical faculties, then that will support. That's more work originally, but you're going to keep yourself away from false paths. You're going to protect yourself from the way of delusion, of which there are many, many varieties out there. And you are going to get yourself in the habit of applying the Dhamma meaningfully to yourself and your life and your situation. So this is that critical reflection and discussion of the Dhamma. Also something which is like I'm not just making these things up. These things are straight out of the suttas, and would have talked about these things many, many, many times. In fact, there's a whole discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya called the Vimamsaka Sutta, and the Buddha gave his students a whole series of questions and tests. How do you test me? Not how the teacher tests a student, how the student's supposed to test the teacher. Do I practice what I preach? Right? Number one, right? Do I tell you to abandon anger and then get angry? Yeah? And so the Buddha tried to avoid this trap of the whole guru thing, and encouraged his community to bring that sense of critical appraisal to the Dhamma. Again, we always need balance. So a critical and a rational approach to the Dhamma is not an approach which is purely about deconstructing and tearing things down. That kind of approach ends up just being nihilistic. We are aiming to grow our knowledge, our wisdom, and our compassion. So we don't criticize in order to harm, we criticize in order to find the truth. So this is that critical reflection on things. Right. So that's good so far. Right. Nice. Then maybe we'll do some meditation. Right? Then we start to meditate and we start to bring those things inward, and this then comes to the next stage of these things. Let me just rewind. One thing I forgot to mention. When we're doing that process of critical inquiry, it's not just a critical inquiry into what that teaching is. So it's not just the objective inquiry, but it's also a critical inquiry into what our beliefs and values are. Yeah? This also is very, very important. And there will be times when you read something in the suttas or somebody says something in a Dhamma talk and you think, I don't believe that. I don't agree with that. It sounds wrong. And sometimes we have to wrestle with that. And again, just the example I've been doing the last couple of days, I've been a vegetarian since I was like 18, and the Buddha, and I always found it, the Buddha didn't prohibit eating meat. And I think he should have. I would have been much happier if he had. So I'll try to get a bit closer out of the rain. So I would have been much happier if he'd prohibited meat, because then that would have shown that the Buddha agreed with me, and that I was right all along. It's always nice, right? Why didn't he? I mean, it's a complicated area. I don't want to talk about it for too long, but the fact that my belief about what to do is not sort of obviously mirrored or reflected in the suttas has caused me to reflect on things, to reflect on my own beliefs and how we read the suttas, how we understand the teachings, how we apply them, how context has changed. And so the fact that we don't agree with something has actually, for me, been something that stimulated my own wisdom and my inquiry. So we have to have views and beliefs about things, right? That's just how your mind works. You can't do anything about that. But we hold them lightly. Yeah? We hold them like a hypothesis, which we're going to be testing, rather than a dogma that we're going to be imposing. Okay? As a general rule, if we want to move from ignorance towards wisdom, we start with what we can know. Now, start with the known. The simpler the better. The more obvious the better. And then when we can establish what is known, we move tentatively and carefully towards what we don't know. And if we're going to bring in theory to explain that, we bring in as little theory as possible. The smallest theory that will explain what we need to explain is all we need. Yeah? Because that's all a theory is. Right? All of these wonderful views and ideas and opinions that you have, they're just theories. And all that they are is just ways of seeing. It might be a better way of seeing or a less better way, more accurate or less accurate, but that's all it is. So if it's helping you to understand, that's good. If not, let it go. Yep. Can you still hear? How are we going for hearing? Yep. All right. Just closing the windows. All right. So now we come to meditation. Now, so far we've been within the realm, more or less, the realm of the conceptual. So the growth of the wisdom in Buddhism has three overall stages. The first one is the conceptual stage, which is what we've been talking about. The next one is the experiential stage, which is what we're going to next. And then the final stage is the plane of realization, right, where you become enlightened. So far we've been talking about the conceptual stage. When it comes to meditation, we start to apply that wisdom and that understanding to our own experience. No longer is suffering an abstract idea that we see in the book or something like that, but it is something that we actually see inside ourselves. We can read in the suttas, it says that when you have a feeling, that the mind tends to crave that feeling, if it's a pleasant feeling. Yeah? If it's an unpleasant feeling, you tend to push it away. Okay? Now you know that idea. When you're in meditation, we look and we see that. That's how the mind works. And you start to observe the processes of how your mind is working. Now, again, of course, this is an experiential learning. The framework of the Dhamma that you have learned is there to support you to understand your experience better. But even that framework we hold very lightly. Yeah? Don't go into meditation and start calling things doctrines and labeling them and categorizing them. All right? No. We just use our attention. Turn towards things. Okay, that's what's going on. Okay. So many times when we're meditating, we can miss what is right there because of something that we've been told, because of something that we believe about meditation. Yeah? And that can hide the reality of what we're experiencing. I'll give you just an example of this. Was when I was teaching meditation in, where was it? Ventura, I think. And I said, when you have a thought in your mind, that these thoughts are not just random, but the thoughts come from your desires. Huh? And someone said to me, they'd been meditating for years and they'd never realized that. They always thought that the thoughts were just random. They just happened to you. And they said, isn't that what everyone says? Everyone says, oh, these thoughts just happen? They're just random? But no. Every single thought that comes into your mind comes from your desire because you want something. Yeah? And so this person had been meditating for many years and had never noticed that because they had an idea that they thought that these thoughts were just random. Actually, the truth was there all along. They can look inside themselves and see that. You can see how your thoughts are being produced by your desires. Yeah? But the ideas we have about meditation, they direct our attention. Yeah? So a lot of the times, like we have this kind of idea that, like in meditation, it's like direct experience, which is unmediated by concepts. And we get this idea through various Zen teachings and things like this. But like I'm not going to sort of comment on those things because I'm not that familiar with them. But that idea is not really true. All of our experience is mediated by concepts. That's how the mind works. You can't just, it just doesn't work otherwise. The concepts are the things that hold your mind together and give it a shape and a form and a function. So it's the way that we use the concepts. We use it lightly, we use it transparently, we use it reflectively. Yeah? That's the difference. And we can see, if I apply my mind with this framework, let's say, for example, let's say I want to meditate on impermanence. Right? Nice one. Yeah, sit and meditate and watch things be impermanent. Great. And that's going to open up certain kinds of experience to me. It's going to shape my attention so I will see some things and not see other things. Another time, maybe I want to meditate on suffering. I look inside and I see I'm looking exactly the same. Everything's the same in my meditation, except I've got a different word in my mind. Dukkha. Yeah, suffering. And so what I see is going to be different. And the way it shapes my experience is going to be different. So concepts, the words that we use around meditation are always shaping the kinds of experience we have in meditation, and that shapes the kinds of results that we get from meditation. So as we begin that process of meditation, that, if you like, that application of the concepts of Dhamma, which now usually that's going to happen for you because you're doing a meditation method, right? So you learn a meditation method from someone, from myself, from a sutta, from some talk, from some app, whatever. and you have this idea in your mind what this meditation should be, then you go and you do it, and then that gives you certain results, just like we were doing earlier when we were sharing the meditation. Now, that is starting to deepen your experience of wisdom. You're moving away from the relatively shallow realm of linguistic concepts, of discussions and so on, towards something which is more experiential and deeper. But that's a process. Happen slowly, little bit by little bit. As you go deeper into the meditation, then you'll find that the words are needed less. The concepts are still there, but they're more like they're more there as as an echo or a mirror, rather than being something which is explicitly there. You're not saying, yes, this is the first noble truth, this is the second noble truth, but you're seeing the realization of these things. And that process of deepening is mostly facilitated through the practice of Samadhi, which we were doing earlier. So it's Samadhi that allows our mind to receive the truth at a deep level. How does it do that? It does that for a number of reasons. One is because the mind is clear and still and bright. So it's like looking through a still, clear pond of water. But Samadhi does other things for us as well. One of the things that Samadhi does is it makes us happy. It makes us content. It makes you feel safe. And when you feel safe, you are ready to get the bad news. All right? When you experience Samadhi, you experience peace in your mind. It's an astonishing thing. It's so powerful because you experience inside yourself a peace and a happiness that only you can know, only you can make, and that nobody can take away from you. It's yours. And once you've experienced that, even a little bit, even one time, you know that is possible. And so that gives you so much more confidence when you look and you see, actually, there's also this thing which is suffering. There's also maybe a deep sadness. Maybe there's a deep sense of anxiety. Maybe I'm afraid. Or maybe it's just, ow, my knee's hurting, ow. All of these are different forms of dukkha. And we want to get rid of it or explain it away. But now we have that softness and that gentleness to be able to hold it. Just be peaceful, accept it. It's all right. It's all right. The other way, or one other way that Samadhi contributes to the growing of wisdom is because the nature of Samadhi is to bring everything together. And what that means is that at one talk, maybe you hear one idea. At another talk, maybe you hear another idea. You never even put them together. In Samadhi, those things will come together. You'll see the relationships between things. Or maybe it's not something you heard in a talk. Maybe it's an experience that's happened in your life. Maybe somebody said something to you, and it wasn't actually a very big thing, right? They said something just ordinary to you, but you got really upset. And you're like, why? Why did I get so upset? But again, when you're sitting in meditation, suddenly it will come to you. That's why. Yeah? Because this other thing happened to me that one time, and it really hurt. And I was carrying that around in me. And then this little thing triggered me, even though it was such a small thing. Okay. So that's samadhi, that's bringing things together. What it does, essentially, is samadhi dissolves the barriers and the walls in your mind and allows all parts of your mind to come together, including parts that have been locked away very carefully for a very long time. But all of those parts of your mind are parts of who you are. And you don't need to be afraid of them. You're okay. You might not be great. You might not even be very good, but you're all right. I mean, you're passable, you know. It's just human, right? And so you allow all those things in, and there's that process of acceptance. And at a very deep level, samadhi then allows for the emergence of the realization and the insight into the Dhamma. Now, the nature of insight into the Dhamma is very strange, because it's just the same thing. It's like impermanence. You all know what impermanence is. It's easy, right? The rain is loud now, and in a minute it won't be. It's impermanent. It's obvious. But you will see that again and again in your meditation. Countless times, hundreds of times, thousands of times. And then, when your mind is very clear, you'll see that as if it's for the first time. And it will be a shock. It will come to you like this revelation. What? And to actually see in your mind something ending that was there and just isn't. It's shocking. And again, it's samadhi that gives you the stability to be able to see that and to not freak out. What happens when things end? That's scary. Yeah? My thoughts have ended. My beliefs have ended. My sense of self is gone. Who am I? I'm no one. What's happening? There's nothing. There's just this. All there is this. And then that ends too. And so this is the process of insight through meditation is always very challenging. So this is that second stage of the development of wisdom. And then the final stage of development of wisdom, of course, is the actual realization of the truth. Now, the Buddha described that as being like the flash of lightning in the dark night. Before you couldn't see, and now you could. You thought you could. You thought you knew. And yeah, sure, we know to some degree, right? But then you actually see this is what it is. And the world is never the same. According to the Buddha's teachings, there is a number of different stages of what we call enlightenment. The first stage is what we call stream entry. And that stream entry happens when we have developed all of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Who can list them for me? 8 factors. Go. Nice. Okay, very good. Very good. Somebody's been paying attention. Excellent. So good. So when all of those factors have been developed, okay, then the mind matures, takes a bit of time, all of these things have to come together, and at a certain point you see, and then there's a difference between what the suttas call like the knowledge through reflection, to the Ditti Nidhana Kanti, to the Yatha Bhuta Jnana Dasana, knowing and seeing things how they really are. That's what happens at that moment that we call stream entry. So there you have a vision. You see the Four Noble Truths. You see dependent origination. You see impermanence, suffering, not self. You see the path. You see where you were. Yeah, and certain knowledges will come to you. And in particular, what they call 3 fetters will come to an end. The fetter of doubt comes to an end. Right? Why would you doubt? You've already seen it. None of these things are magical, all right? To say doubt comes to an end is like saying if you've never been to the Buddhist library, you only have a map. Oh, is this where it is? Oh, do I turn left here? Is it down there? Is it around the corner? Is this where it is? And you doubt. And then when you get here, you don't doubt anymore. Right? It's nothing mystical about it. It's just that you've seen it, so you don't doubt it anymore. Yeah? Then you also let go of what they call misapprehension of precepts and practices, or virtues and vows. So basically what this means is that because you've got there, you know how to get there. Same thing, if you use the same analogy, right? I know I walk down Church Street, I turn left here, I turn right there. I'm not in doubt as to the path of how to get to the Buddhist library. Yeah? And so you don't believe that by doing this particular ritual, by taking this vow or something like that, because you've seen actually the way you get here is the Noble Eightfold Path. And the last one is the views of a self, the Sakkaya Ditthi. So again, the view of a self is the view of permanence, that there is a single abiding essence which constitutes the ultimate reality of who you are. And the realization of the Dhamma shows you that things are conditional, that they change, that everything who I am has been caused by what I've done in the past, and what I will do in the future is caused by what I'm doing now. And what we see is this process of unfolding of conditionality. We don't see an abiding essence. So we let go of that. And so these are the three fetters that are abandoned by the stream enterer on the first vision of the Dhamma. And it's at that point that we can say that somebody is a noble individual who has entered the stream of the Dhamma. And according to the Buddha revealed kind of under duress that a person like that could not be reborn in any bad rebirth, and that they would have a maximum of 7 lifetimes. Okay, so they're not fully enlightened yet, but they've got only 7 lifetimes. The Buddha didn't want to tell people this because he thought they'd slack off. And in the Ratana Sutra, it seems to be almost kind of inviting this. It says, not even Bhusapamatta uses this term, even if they're mightily negligent, then they still can't get reborn an 8th time. Right? So even if you try as hard as you possibly can to just like sleep all day and never practice or do anything, then you're still condemned to getting enlightened. So it's not too bad. So this is stream entry as the first of the 4 stages of enlightenment in Buddhism. So this, once again, just to recap, is the path to enlightenment in Buddhism. It begins with our behavior, our conduct. And in the first class, we reflected on that. We looked at what are those kinds of behaviors that are creating suffering for ourselves and suffering for others. And I tried to apply these principles of wisdom and inquiry to that consideration of ethics and morality. So many times as a monk, I hear people asking me questions like, is this right? Well, I get it, right? You would need some advice. But I don't see my job as telling you what's right and what's wrong. Yeah? I see my job as trying to help you to learn how to know what's right and wrong for yourself. Yeah? So I'm not saying that people shouldn't ask these questions. I'm just saying that there's a limit to what you can expect from them. At the end of the day, we have to know for ourselves. And the answers that I find are not necessarily going to be the ones that you find. So we considered that nature of ethics, and we discussed that. And then in this class, in the first part, we looked at meditation and samadhi, and we practiced with supporting each other to develop that meditation. And rather than focusing overly much on the method of meditation, I tried to show that what's more important in the meditation is that feeling of emotional support and ease and comfort. Yeah? Meditation, the development of samadhi, is an emotional process. Yeah? And through that support that we were offering each other in that, I was trying to mirror the kind of support that we can give for ourselves. Normally when we're meditating, we don't always have a meditation buddy, unfortunately, so we should show ourselves that same honor and love and respect, yeah, in meditation. That's what leads our meditation to become deep, not getting the right method. And then finally, we looked at the discussion of, we discussed wisdom and the process of acquiring wisdom. So I talked a little bit about the content of wisdom in terms of the Four Noble Truths, and then we looked at the process of acquiring wisdom through, first of all, the experience of suffering, then the gaining of faith, approaching a teacher, asking questions, learning, memorizing, remembering the teaching, reflecting on it and discussing it, applying it in meditation, and deepening the practice of reflection through meditation and through the growth of our samadhi until finally we realize and see the truth for ourselves at the moment of stream entry. So this is how to get enlightened. Over to you. Questions? Yeah. Where's compassion? What do you think? Well, do you think what about when we were doing that meditation before? We were practicing compassion with each other, right? Yeah. Sure, why not? Try not to think about it in terms of whether you need it or not. Yeah? Wisdom's good. Why wouldn't you want to have wisdom? Yeah? You can't ever really truly separate all of these things. Yeah? If you think about, the practice of metta, what are we doing when we practice metta? We are erasing the difference between ourselves and others. Yeah? And we have that love for ourselves just as we have the love for others. So in a sense, that's also not self. Because I'm not, I'm not just, this is not just it's not just a sort of a technical sort of thing here. This is very real, right? Because when we have that feeling of love and compassion for somebody else, we're not so selfish. Yeah? And so this is how we are eroding or making looser and more flexible that sense of self. So if you develop metta to a very deep degree, then it's very close to the reflection of not self.
And I think in metta meditation, when we talking about giving metta to people in hate, it requires wisdom as well.
Right. First of all, you have to know who you hate.
I mean, as a human, we usually have trouble with people. I mean, we have disagreement or situation where other people hurt us intentionally or not. And I feel like when we do metta, we also talking about them, and it's not easy as well if we don't have that reason.
Right. Absolutely, yeah. And then you learn as you go on, why is it that you hate that person, right? What is it about it, And, sometimes maybe it's something specific that they did. They'd heard something to hurt you. Maybe sometimes it's not. Maybe they just got an annoying voice, or whatever. But there's something that triggers that in you. And so, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So this is why we can't, in Buddhism we talk about samatha and vipassana. Samatha is a meditation that develops tranquility, and vipassana is a meditation that develops insight. But they're not completely separate. They're two aspects of meditation. And whenever we're meditating, we are also developing peace, and we're also developing wisdom. Yeah. Yes, please.
I enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
Lord Buddha was great seeker of the truth.
Yes.
I think we have to accept memory and intelligence is not the same.
Okay. Yeah.
Memory is entire function.
Yeah.
Memorizing something does not
Sure.
If you look at world, all the great scientists have been lateral thinkers.
Right.
The lateral thinker where we don't know how the brain functions.
Right.
So really it's based on brain function. Philosopher thinking is a poor, relatively poor outcome. That's what's happening is that we are getting preconditioned. If Japanese come to Australia, he looks for Japanese restaurant.
Right.
If Korean come to Australia, whatever, they are getting preconditioned what we've been taught. So if you want better world, if we want something nicer, Russia didn't say, perhaps Third World War, we want to prevent it. We really have to access the real truth. We trial seeking. But in 2,006 years, 2,600 years,
Yeah.
so Lord Buddha was born, and maybe longer. We have not improved on. It's because of preconditioning of our mind. And we still have same wars, same destruction of the humanity.
Yeah.
So what the hell we are doing on this earth? We really, what I would suggest, I'm thinking of it, that all religion philosophy are almost identical. Let's not differentiate and move forward.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, it's a really, really beautiful point. Thank you. It is a how do I put this? It is a stirring reminder for those of us who are spiritual teachers that we think that we can teach people to be better people. Right? And you can look around your circles and you can look around the people in the room, and everyone here, I'm guessing probably most people here think, oh yeah, that was good, I learned something, and you can help to be a better person. But as you said, we've been doing this for 2,500 years, and we've still got wars, and we've still got all of these kinds of things, and so we have to ask ourselves that hard question: why? Why is it not working? You know, and I don't think it's not. I don't think it's that it doesn't work. I think it just takes a lot of time, and I think in some ways we have got better. I think in some ways humanity is better than it was, but in many ways also is not, or is even worse. So it's complicated. But this is the role, and it's like if we're going to be here as human beings. Then the purpose of our spiritual path has to be to support us to become better people. Otherwise, why do we do it? Yeah. Thank you.
Along those lines, I like what you said about the scientists and that lateral thinking.
Right, yeah.
And I'm just wondering where the place for, like, you know, being a bit of a renegade and rebellion comes in with wisdom. Like,
right.
Ajahn Mun probably comes to mind, or then the other one is like in Siddhartha, you know, he goes and obviously fiction, but stays with the Buddha.
Right.
And then he leaves, and he's like, yeah, you've got it all, and I can't find anything I disagree with. But if I just mechanically follow your path, I'm not going to find it for myself. And that was a really powerful motif for me, you know, like, it was almost like an act of rebellion, even though he knew.
Yeah, no, very true. And that was a really, really good point about the scientists being lateral thinkers. There's a kind of a prison of knowledge, right? But at the same time, there's an even bigger prison of ignorance. So, a bit of balance is needed. Yeah. again, all I can say is, what I try to do in my life. I try to act out of respect and with a bit of humility towards those who've come before me. And even the work I do, say, with sort of Central, I always kind of, if I'm translating a Pali word or phrase, then I always sort of look, well, what have, there's been a lot of great people who've done this work before. What did Bhikkhu Bodhi do? What did K.R. Norman do? Just found another translation here by my old mate Bhikkhu Warado. And so I didn't know he translated this, so I just found this. Okay, that's cool. So I'll go and I'll check this. I'll say, oh, what did Warado think this one? Because this is a hard text to translate. And, maybe he's got some things right that I got wrong. So always sort of questioning that, but at the same time, at the end of the day, we have to find our own wisdom, and we have to be responsible for that. And we can't live our life in fear of being wrong about things. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You talked about cultivating wisdom to
Yes.
find the truth.
Yeah.
Will everyone's version of the truth be different because of our preconceptions, upbringing, and experiences in life?
Mm-hmm.
So the truth that we're finding will be different for everyone. I thought there's only vulnerable truth. Are you talking about vulnerable truth?
No. True. One truth. Ekang hi sachang nadutiyamati yasma pajanang vivade pajanang, which means the truth is one. There is no second, but people like to argue about it anyway. So reality is just the way that it is, right? And this is that thing, and this is a bell, and that's a book, and that's just how the world is. So we all have a different perspective on that. Okay. The notion of truth in Buddhism is pragmatic, right? Not absolute. And in that way, it's similar to science. Right? So science is built on approximations. Engineers will calculate something to a certain number of decimal points, because that's how many decimal points they've got in their calculator. And when you're doing something, even if you're doing something like building a plane or something, everything's approximate. You make it as good as you can, but at the end of the day, everything actually is approximate. And is it necessary that every part in the plane is within the fraction of a millimeter of how it was or whatever? I mean, they have their engineering standards. But what matters is that the thing doesn't fall out of the sky. Right? Or the example I mentioned before about the dirty laundry, right? If you do get finally around to putting your stuff in the machine to wash it, what matters is that it washes your clothes. Yeah? So it's the same thing in Buddhism. We don't have to have an agreement about everything that's going to be exactly the same. And we don't have to have, it's not that everything has to be perfect and, but it has to be good enough. It's that pragmatic idea of truth. Here we go. I think that it's too easy to simply accept the fact that everyone has their different perspective of the truth, and we tend to fall into two camps that are both, I think, lazy. One camp is, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, and all we can do is butt heads about it. And the other camp is, oh, well, everything's subjective, so, that's just like your opinion, man. Right? So we can do both of those too, but neither of those actually leads to a particularly fruitful discussion. They're both actually ways that we can stop listening to each other. We can stop listening to each other because we assume that we're always just going to be different, or we can stop listening to each other because we assume that there's no point. We just agree to everything anyway. And this is why we have rational dialogue. Yeah? A rational discussion where we can look at what we can know, what we can't know. and we can clarify some facts. We can't solve everything, but we can have a meaningful conversation that will actually move forward. You know, how many times have we been in that situation where just conversations just go round and round and round in circles and you never solve anything, you know? Patrick Carney once said, and he got it from some anthropologist, his meditation teacher, and he said that a tradition, a religious tradition, is like a family argument. So a religious tradition isn't like a set body of knowledge, right? But it's like Christmas dinner with your family, where you argue about the same things that you argued about last Christmas. And that is what defines you as a tradition, that you're having those conversations again and again, going round and round and round. So it is possible to have constructive conversations. The first thing that you have to do to have a constructive conversation is to have empathy and good faith. Not trying to beat somebody or win somebody or prove someone's right, but to listen in good faith. And part of what listening in good faith means is to agree on the facts. When you're wrong, you say, I'm wrong. Move forward. And if somebody's unable to admit when they're wrong, you can't have a rational discussion. So that's harder, but it is possible. Yeah. Sorry, you're going to have to speak up because of this.
So you mentioned when somebody doesn't admit that they're wrong when they're wrong,
Right.
and it's hard to have a rational discussion. Then what do you do? Like, there's some passion coming at them.
Yeah. So a question is, if somebody is not able to admit that they're wrong, what do you do? It's hard, right? It depends on the context, right? I mean, if I'm having a conversation, if I'm having a discussion on a forum or online and somebody's unable to admit that they're wrong, then I just leave the conversation. Honestly, there's no point. I mean, you try to sort of point it out at first and say, well, look, actually, that's not what happened. But if they can't figure the way around that, I'm sorry, but it's just a waste of time. But you can't always do that, right? If it's your boss, what do you do? Right? What if it's your sister, what do you do? Like, that wouldn't happen. that wouldn't happen, but if it did, hypothetically, then it's hard, right? So yes, some compassion. Like when somebody's unable to admit that they're wrong, it comes from a place of defensiveness, right? Often they're actually sort of behind the scenes. They're like prickly at the front, but actually they kind of know, you know? So sometimes just kind of being a bit patient and being a bit gentle with you. But if they're at that point where they are getting that defensive, then that's a sign to just leave it, you know? Settle it down, okay, move on. And then so these are kind of the social cues about how to have that constructive conversation, which again, I think is one of the big problems with the fact that we've moved all our conversations online. It's context collapse. You don't have those cues anymore. And you don't know the difference between someone who's actually just a pig-headed idiot and there's no point in having a conversation with them, and somebody who's maybe had an extra strong cup of coffee that morning and and we'll get over it soon enough, you know? So, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Ishika, yeah. You're going to really have to yell. I cannot hear a word you're saying, Ishika. You can make, yeah. Come. Come. Hey, my cup of tea.
I've noticed where some people like say Buddhism is like words like compassion and wisdom.
Okay.
Like when they say what is Buddhism, they just like limit it to words. Is that correct, or is that what's your opinion on that? And also, is there like everything or like wisdom without compassion? Does it? I don't think it's a problem. So.
Right. Okay. Thanks. So Ishika's asking about wisdom and compassion. And she said that some people say that you can sum Buddhism up by saying Buddhism is about wisdom and compassion. I don't know. I think that's pretty good. I mean, look, it's only 2 words. You can't say everything. But if you're going to pick 2 words, sure, that's pretty good. And, you know, in a way that corresponds with the 2 wings of meditation that we were talking about. Like the samatha meditation is more on the side of compassion. So it's that emotional side, loving kindness and gentleness. And then the wisdom side, comes from the vipassana. So, yeah, I think that's a reasonably good understanding. And the important thing, again, is that those things come together. And compassion without wisdom can easily turn to folly. And we can end up doing all kinds of things that are going to just be harmful. And on the other hand, if we have wisdom, we have a strong intellect and intelligence, but without compassion to guide it, then it just becomes destructive. And again, this is something we can see. It's really sad, actually. You see on social media that this happens. You can see it actually happening in real time, where people who are actually quite intelligent and have contributions and things to say, just over the years, just get worse and worse. And then they just end up just to own everybody, saying, okay, now I'm just going to buy Twitter or something like that. And there's somebody who's like actually an intelligent person who's contributed a lot, but just turns into something almost unrecognizable. So this is that intelligence lacking compassion, and compassion lacking intelligence. Again, this is what I was saying a bit earlier, that if we practice our spiritual path without that sense of discernment, then we can very easily get drawn into all kinds of weird and wonderful byways, which can be nice, right? We can play around with them and we can experiment and so on, but it also can be dangerous. We can easily get drawn into paths that are at best useless and possibly even abusive or dangerous. So we need to keep our sense of discernment there, or else our spiritual life is going to end up just making things worse. Yeah.
Can you expand on where the accountability is between discernment and faith?
Can you give me a bit more detail on that?
You were mentioning earlier about the importance of faith. Yeah. But you were also saying the Buddha gave teaching on discerning listening and asking questions of the teacher. You also made the point that if you approach everything as looking for problems and rubbish, you'll find it. Yeah. But yet faith is a door which you need to open somehow, I think, to step through. Yeah. Where do you leave one behind and pick up the other?
Well, I don't think that they're separate enough to quite do that. Yeah, but they go hand in hand. If we think of the faith is what is informing the growth of wisdom. So faith gives us like a perspective and a sense of emotional commitment. Think, for example, if you have no faith in an idea, then how are you ever going to put the time in to actually figure out whether there's something to it? Think about, say, what a scientist does. Right? A scientist has faith. They have faith in their hypothesis, faith in their method, faith in their data, faith in their colleagues, right? Yeah, that colleagues aren't just lying to them. It's not always true, but you have to have that, and all of those things can fail, right? It happens that sometimes people do actually lie to each other when they're doing research. It happens sometimes data is wrong or is falsified. It happens that methodology doesn't work, right? It happens that all of those things can happen. But you have to begin with a certain degree of faith that gives you a conviction and a commitment to carry it through. Then you can assess, oh yeah, actually, the data was wrong. Oops. And you can learn. So it has to be that kind of process. But, think about it again, if you're a scientist, like if you're like, oh, all the data is wrong all the time, then you're not really going to be doing any more research. Yeah. And this has been a tendency this is getting a bit off topic, but it's been a tendency in, certainly in American Buddhist studies in the last generation, that there's been like this extreme skepticism And it's been, I think, like really destructive as just this kind of undermining. It's like, yeah, these are 2,500-year-old texts, and if I want to find things wrong with them, yeah, sure, I can find things wrong with them. But what are we here for? Like, what's the point? Is our point to actually know something about this, or to think of how smart we are because, you know, we can talk about how nobody knows anything? So, yeah. Again, to me, you know, you can think, again, another way of putting it is to think of our relation to faith as being like how we would relate in a healthy way to a person. Yeah? And so you you can't relate in a healthy way to a person if you simply don't believe anything that they're saying to you. Yeah? You have to have good faith. You have to come with an assumption that they're probably telling the truth most of the time. And you know what? Most people do, actually. And most people are okay most of the time. And yeah, sometimes that hypothesis doesn't work. All right. Yeah. But we have to begin that way. At least we can give that to that other person. It's 5 o'clock, everybody. Time to wrap up. Thank you all so much for coming. It has been my absolute pleasure to be with you for these 2 afternoons. I hope that I was able to share some Dhamma with you in a way that was helpful and reasonably entertaining. And I wish you all the best, and may you become enlightened swiftly and pleasantly. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We have our regular Friday night talks. Anybody wants to come along Friday nights in Harris Park, and we're online. Those talks will be continuing during the Rains Retreat, which is coming up. So in other words, just continuing indefinitely, except I will be going to Sri Lanka in June. So who knows what's going to happen then. But anyway, for the time being, we will be giving teachings. That's about it. Joyce. No worries.